Good morning, everyone. So this is our prediabetes prevention virtual tabling. Today, it's just me. You're stuck with me today. Rainer is on PTO. And today we're going to talk about nutrition's role in prediabetes management. So before we get into more of the meat and potatoes, let's review kind of what prediabetes is. So someone has prediabetes when their blood sugar levels are higher than normal, but they're not high enough to be diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. If you have prediabetes, this means that you're starting to become more insulin resistant. And if left untreated, it can eventually develop into type 2 diabetes. And it's also important to note that a lot of people don't experience many symptoms. A lot of people actually experience no symptoms of it. And so how prevalent is prediabetes? So about 88 million American adults, which is about a third of American adults, have prediabetes, which is, kind of an alarming number. And about 8 in 10 of those people actually don't know that they have prediabetes. Again, because prediabetes tends to produce very little symptoms. And so again, what's the big deal? If you're not experiencing any bad symptoms, I mean, who really cares? Well, like I said earlier, prediabetes can eventually develop into type 2 diabetes. And people with prediabetes, type 2 diabetes can cause a bunch of different health problems. So for example, kidney disease, you can get a lot of nerve damage, also called diabetic neuropathy, where you start to lose like feeling in your hands and feet, or it feels like, little pins. You can start to experience vision loss and glaucoma. You can get poor oral and foot health, and you can also it's also very easy to get skin infections because your wounds tend to, like if you get a cut on your foot, and again with the nerve damage, you might not feel it happening. You might not realize that you have a injury on your foot, and then if it goes unnoticed, you can it takes longer for your wounds to heal, and then you're a lot more susceptible to different infections. And so in addition to the increased risk of developing type 2 diabetes and the different health problems that it can cause, people with prediabetes are at an increased risk of heart disease, so including things like high blood pressure, high blood cholesterol. And people with prediabetes are also more likely to develop certain types of cancers, such as liver and colorectal cancer. And so there's different prevention strategies you can take. And so, of course, we've been saying that for the past couple weeks, diabetes does not have to be your destiny. Prediabetes is reversible, and you can even prevent or you can even delay and even prevent type 2 diabetes. And there's two different main lifestyle changes you can make. You can improve your dietary guidelines, and you can also increase your physical activity with the goal of losing about 5 to 7% of your body weight. And it can seem kind of like a daunting task, but it's less scary than it actually is. So for example, for a person that weighs 215 pounds, 5% of that is about 10 to 11 pounds. And so losing about a pound a week, you can easily achieve that in 2.5 to 3 months. And so for today, we will be mostly focusing on nutrition and what we can do to improve our diets. So how important is nutrition? So overall, nutrition plays a major role in our lives. Nutrition gives us the energy that we need to carry out our daily lives by providing us calories. And in addition, nutrition improves our overall health by providing us with vitamins and minerals that benefit us in various different ways. So they provide us with things like antioxidants, which help prevent cell damage. They produce anti-inflammatory effects. There's a lot of neurological and psychological benefits, so keeping our brains healthy, making us feel good, and as well as immune system support, which of course given the current situation is really important. And so for prediabetes specifically, having a good control over our nutrition can help us lose that goal of 5 to 7% of our body weight. And by controlling our nutrition, we can better control our blood sugar. And so, being mindful of things like calories, mindful of our carb intakes, and then, both of those play hand in hand with each other to help improve insulin sensitivity. And so let's just go over some basics first. So there's 3 basic macronutrients that make up the foods that we eat: fat, carbohydrates or carbs, and protein. So fat's kind of made up of, mono, polyunsaturated fats, saturated fats, and they provide about 9 calories per gram of fat. And that's why a lot things that have a very high fat content, they also have a very high caloric content. So stuff with a lot of fat in it is very calorie dense. And so then carbs, those include things like sugars, fiber. Those provide 4 calories per gram of carbs. And then protein. Protein is made up of essential and non-essential amino acids, and those provide 4 calories per gram of protein, similar to carbs. And there isn't really a set guideline of, what percentage of your meals should be fat, carbs, and protein. It's more of a case-by-case basis, based on like a diet plan that's best for you. And if you're unsure of what that plan would look like for you, at the clinic, we have 2 dietitians who can help make those choices for best suited for your goals. And so a little bit more about carbohydrates. So carbohydrates are one of the most important macronutrients that people with prediabetes and type 2 diabetes need to monitor and control. So they're very important, if not the most important. And so carbs kind of get a bad rap. You hear it that you don't want to eat too many carbs, but they aren't actually the enemy. So carbs are our body's preferred fuel source because our body can easily convert them into glucose, which will fuel our cells. And then the problem comes is when we eat too much carbs per meal, including getting carbs from poor nutritional sources. So we eat foods that are high in like refined sugars and refined starches, as well as foods that are low in fiber. And so there are 3 main types of carbs: sugars, and that includes things like sucrose or table sugar, fructose, which is found naturally in fruits, as well as lactose, which is the sugar that's kind of found in milk. And then there's also starches, and this is kind of like the main source of our carbs. So things like bread, beans, some legumes, potatoes, those are all made up of starches, as well as other things. And then fiber. So fiber plays an important role in digestion. It feeds all the good bacteria in our intestines and regulates bowel movements, and it also keeps us fuller. So if you eat foods that are much higher in fiber, you'll start to feel a lot fuller. And so we talk about carbs and how, you have to be wary of how much carbs you take in. And so then you kind of wonder, like, well, how does this affect, blood sugar? How does all of these excess carbs affect me? So food is first broken down in the digestive system. The carbs we eat during our meals specifically are broken down into glucose. And so then as the digested food passes into your small intestines, the glucose gets absorbed into your bloodstream. And it's at this point that blood sugars start to rise. As blood sugar level rises, the pancreas releases a hormone called insulin. And insulin helps distribute glucose into the bloodstream and get into your different cells. And then once the glucose is inside the cell, then your cell can use it for energy. But that's just one way that carbs can affect blood glucose. And so most foods, will raise our blood sugar, but this happens at different rates. And so some will raise it faster or lower than others. And so the glycemic index ranks foods based on how quickly they raise blood sugar levels. And so a lower number on the blood glucose, the slower it'll raise your blood sugar. The higher the number, the faster. And so you can see on this graph, something with a low GI is gonna, it's gonna raise it a little bit, but it's gonna not raise too much. As opposed to something with a high GI, things like soda or, white wheat bread, things like that, it's gonna produce this massive spike and then eventually come down. And so again, here's just some examples of foods you can find on the glycemic index. So you see like vegetables are typically very low, as well as some, fruits are kind of on the lower side. Things like, pancakes where they're kind of refined, made of like, white flour, are a little bit higher, as well as soda and donuts. And so just a little bit more nutrition information so we can move on to fats. And so fats is another macronutrient that's important to our health. Fats also kind of get a bad rap, but fats, also totally aren't the enemy. We do need them. And they play major roles in our health, such as absorbing specific vitamins. And so if you hear about like vitamin A, vitamin E, vitamin K, those vitamins are what's called fat soluble, meaning that you need to have some sort of fat in order for your body to absorb and gain benefit from that. And so dietary fat, helps facilitate that process. As well as fats are also important for producing various hormones in the body. And then, a layer of fat also isn't too bad because it helps insulate and protect your organs, and it also, helps retain your body temperature, especially when it's colder out. And so the problem with fats, again, similar to carbs, is when we tend to overconsume them, and we pick foods that are high in saturated fats and lower in mono and polyunsaturated fats. And we also, again, we also have to be careful of fats because they are very calorie dense, so they provide 9 calories per gram. So that's almost, twice as much, it's a little bit more than twice as much as carbs or protein does. And so there are 4 main types of fat in our diet. So there's mono and polyunsaturated fats, saturated fats, and then trans fats. And so mono and polyunsaturated fats are typically, what we think of as good fats, and they help us, with all the good things that, we need. It raises our HDL cholesterol and lowers our LDL cholesterol, and it also, benefits our health and our brains as well. Saturated fats, the jury's still out on, whether they're definitely good or definitely bad. You can make arguments either way. The general consensus really though is to limit our saturated fat intake because saturated fats raise both HDL, but then they also raise LDL, which is the bad cholesterol. And then trans fats should be avoided as much as possible because trans fats actually raise our LDL, our bad cholesterol, and then lower our good cholesterol, our HDL. And so one thing I wanted to get into was learning how to read food labels, because I know for me personally, this is what really helped me, was actually learning, what exactly am I eating? And so you see up here, we have the serving information. And so it gives you the serving size as well as how many servings are in each package of food. Below that, you have the calorie amount. And then right here is where you have the nutrients and then the daily values of that nutrient. And this is based off of, a standard 2,000 calorie diet. But so here you can see it has our total fat, our saturated fat, and our trans fat. They show us this because, we typically want to keep an eye on how much saturated fat we're taking in, as well as, whether we're taking in any saturated fat. It also includes cholesterol and sodium, things good for, our cardiovascular health, making sure that we're on top of that. And then it also has our total carbohydrates. And then also it breaks it down into dietary fiber. because we all need fiber. It's very important both for, regulating bowel movements and, keeping all, keeping our intestines healthy and everything. And then we also have total sugars. And then the new thing that the FDA actually came out with is that companies are required to put how many added sugars are in a package of food, because this is something you want to limit too. You don't want to eat a lot of foods that contain sugars that were, added into the, the packaging, or like the process. You want to eat foods that are more contain those sugars naturally. And then, of course, we just have protein on the bottom, but then we also have these 4 micronutrients, vitamin D, which is important for our bone and skin health, calcium, which kind of goes hand in hand with vitamin D, and then iron and potassium. And these are typically, they used to have like vitamin A, vitamins E, different B vitamins, but because we're not really deficient in them, the FDA made it so that we're no longer really required to, post them on the box. And so then if you want to look at how much, because when you look at like total fat 9 grams, well, what does that mean? If you go over to the daily value, this shows you, oh, well, this is, if you eat a serving of this food, this is 12% of the recommended daily value of fat that you should be, intaking into your diet. And so again, like something under 5 is pretty low, while something with 20 is pretty high. And with a lot of processed foods, I know you can really get into trouble with sodium, because a serving might be 40-50%, and then you have like 3 servings per package, and you could easily eat all of them. And then just like that, within 1 package of food, you've consumed more than your daily value for sodium. And then one thing I thought was kind of interesting too is a recent change that they made to food labels is that if a package of food is broken down into multiple servings, but it's easy to consume that entire bag, the FDA actually requires companies to put the total nutrition information, as though you're eating the entire bag. Which, I mean, let's be real. If it's like a bag of chips, or like a whole beverage bottle of Gatorade or something like that, I mean, we all can, eat that in one sitting. We're not going to sit there and measure out, 3 pretzels, or well, maybe for half a bottle of Gatorade. And so here you can see they multiplied it out. And so, you have per serving on the left, and then per container on the right. And it has the corresponding values. And make sure that you read the ingredient list. So here's 2 different things of peanut butter. This is like a regular peanut butter. This is like the quote unquote natural peanut butter. And so if you look at the ingredients, you do have peanuts first, but then if you keep reading, you get corn syrup solids, sugar, pea protein, fully hydrogenated vegetable oils. I mean, what is all that stuff? Especially when, you just want peanuts, your peanut butter. And so this is kind of scary, because it shows that they're adding in sugar. And then especially these hydrogenated vegetable oils, if you see this in the ingredient list, that actually means it contains trans fats. And if you see here, it says 0 grams trans fat. And how they can kind of get away with that is if it's less than half a gram, companies can say, you know, that their foods are trans fat free, when in reality, they do contain a little bit of trans fat. And if you're eating more than, you know, a serving size, that can quickly add up to, you know, possibly over 1 or 2, you know, 2 grams of trans fats. And then even if you look at the bottom here, even this, it's, you know, peanuts aren't the only ingredient. You still see, you know, sugar, salt, molasses, and you can see here, you know, 3 grams of sugars that were put in, basically. And so now what I want to talk about is USDA's MyPlate. So we just went over like a bunch of different, you know, nutrition info, but so, you know, now you have a good idea of, you know, watching out for, you know, making sure you're eating, you know, healthy carbs, making sure, you know, you're watching your fat intake, but what does that look like? And so usually you can just go by the USDA's MyPlate, you know, their kind of guidelines. And so what they usually suggest is, so half of your plate are fruits and vegetables, preferably more vegetables, because fruits do have a little bit more sugar, not too much. They're not, you know, horrible for you, but still, you know, half your plate of fruits and vegetables, you know, maybe like a side of dairy. So if you want a glass of milk, or maybe, you know, in the morning you want like a yogurt or some cottage cheese, you know, you can have that on the side. A quarter of your plate for grains, and of course, preferably whole grains, you know, not eating refined ones. And so then a quarter plate for your protein source. And so, you know, usually you want something about the size of a deck of cards, they usually say. And in here also you put stuff like, you know, beans, lentil, you know, stuff that's higher in protein, you know, or tofu. And then, oh, and one thing I wanted to mention too, starchy vegetables do not count in this, you know, in this part. If you do want like a potato or something, you're gonna have to count it in the grains. And here we kind of mean, you know, dark green leafy vegetables, carrots, and of course, you know, different kinds of fruit. So you don't get away with it that easy. And so there are numerous other ways that you can kind of, you can take to make changes into your diet to help you lose weight. And of course, you know, you don't have to implement all these changes right away. And you can start with ones that are easy for you to make, and that, you know, and that are more comfortable, and also go at a pace that's, you know, more comfortable for you. And so, you know, some examples are avoiding sugary beverages. So, you know, sodas and juices tend to have a lot of added sugar in them. And so, you know, at least reducing the amount that you drink every day. So maybe you drink like a 2 liter of soda every day. Well, I mean, if you can, you know, reduce that to, you know, 1 liter or half a 2 liter, you know, that's great. And so you can try opting for beverages lower in sugar, such as teas, decaf coffee, diet soda, and of course, you know, just drinking regular water. You can also try avoiding fried foods, because when you fry foods, that frying process increases the amount of trans fats that are present. And so try experimenting a lot of, you know, with different cooking methods, such as steaming, baking, or grilling. And of course, it's summer. The weather's starting to get a lot nicer, so it's a great time to, you know, practice grilling your food. And so then swapping out unhealthy foods for healthier ones. And of course, there's a bunch of different changes that you can make. There's a lot of different options for you to choose here. And so just to give some examples, so replacing refined grains with whole grains, cutting out the amount of of red meat, so stuff like beef, and eating more lean meats like poultry and fish. You can also include plant-based proteins such as tofu or beans as well. And then cutting down on starchy vegetables like potato and corn with ones that are higher in fiber, such as broccoli, asparagus, carrots, even things like kale and spinach. And then reducing like your sugar intake, so trying to eat fruits in place of, you know, different desserts. And then of course, avoiding trans fats and eliminating saturated fats. And so things you can do there, you know, like try incorporating like nuts and seeds into your diet. You know, nuts and seeds tend to have a lot of fiber as well as a lot of unsaturated fats that are good for us. And cooking with healthy fat sources. You know, so things like olive oil, canola oil, avocado oil, different things like that. And then another thing you can do is prepare meals ahead of time. And so meal prepping is nice because it can help you in a variety of different ways. So if you take the time to prepare your meals for the next few days, you don't have to worry about it throughout the next week. And you can also freeze any meals that you want and then pop them in the microwave or the oven when you're ready to eat them. And it's nice because you can make big batches of easy to cook foods. So one thing I like to do is I like to make, you know, a big pot of rice. I like to bake a bunch of chicken in some foil in the oven. And then maybe I'll steam like some broccoli or peppers or something like that. And then you can just throw all of that into a dip, you know, into like a Tupperware container. And then, you know, you have your meals for, you know, the next week already prepared. And you don't have to worry about cooking anything in the, you know, the rest of that week. And again, you don't really have to start implementing everything all at once. You know, start with stuff that you're more comfortable with and go from there. And this doesn't mean you can't have your favorite foods again. It's just about, you know, eating them in moderation and making sure that, you know, you're not really overdoing it. And so these are some references. And so then if you have any other questions, you know, feel free to email our team email, hpdp@glich.net, and then someone from our team will get back to you. Thank you.